As Robert said, my name is Richard Martin. Although it says Environment Agency there, I work some of my time at the agency, some of my time at Defra, but my time at Defra is dealing with non-agricultural diffuse pollution. One of the things we get challenged on is what exactly is it? Well, this is an outfall from a wastewater treatment works, and this is soil runoff from a field. So diffuse pollution is a sort of it's a bit of a catch-all term, especially in the urban environment. So you could draw a line between one and it's a sort of sloping scale. So we just say it's like multi-point sources, things like misconnections, etc. But I'm going to take you through some of the examples today of the problems that we're facing, trying to achieve what Damien set out in that challenge for us to meet our Water Framework Directive targets. Okay, so what are the drivers? Better quality of life. What we're conscious of, we're trying to persuade everybody on the virtues of the Water Framework Directive, which for most people is utterly irrelevant. But for local authorities, trying to deliver a better quality of life for your residents it must come sort of top of the tree. And money spent on improving the environment gets more return on investment than anything else. You saw Damien talk about ecosystem services, which is a bit of a jargony term for all the things that you put value on. And it's in the reports like that, time and time again, they say that money spent on repairing the urban environment delivers the greatest return on investment. You've got the Natural Environment White Paper and the Water White Paper that you saw back there, and the Water Framework Directive. And actually, it's not just the Environment Agency and Defra that has a responsibility, local authorities do too. They have to have regard to what goes in the plans. And in the West Midlands area, they've done some really good work in engaging. If anyone wants to have a chat with me at lunchtime, they've got some really good guidance and stuff on what, how local authorities can get engaged in all this. So let's put diffuse pollution into context. There's many reasons why our water bodies fail, as it was described earlier: invasive species, physical modification, but diffuse pollution is a good chunk of that, 25%. And the urban, well, that equates of that is about a quarter. And then you've got things like mines and rural roads, etc., etc. The other big chunk you see here is agriculture. Diffuse pollution from the agricultural environment is another significant source. So we can't ignore any of them, and to be fair, we can't just go after the water companies and just keep ratcheting up their conditions on their permits for wastewater treatment works. It has to be, we all have to share a portion of the load, and therefore we have to share a portion of the responsibility too. Well, as you can imagine, diffuse pollution from the urban environment is not a very easy thing to tackle. There's a huge range of sources, a huge range of reasons why it's there. It might be sort of coming as dust from atmospheric pollution to septic tanks and all points in between. Trying to embed behavioural change in this is also incredibly difficult. It's once you've done it, you don't want to use that hackneyed expression, but painting the fourth road bridge comes to mind, where you've got to do it time and time again. Capital works such as large retrofits that you saw the ones where it's being built as your development is ongoing, but when it's actually retrofitting in places like London, it can be jolly expensive because land is so expensive. And there's no one party responsible to deliver. As I've got a slide about that in a minute. And then current regulatory powers that the Environment Agency has were never set up to deal with diffuse pollution. They're set up to deal with pollution incidents, point source, that sort of thing. So when you're trying to tackle these issues, it's just, it is very difficult indeed. Here's an example of Roadrunner, which I thought would be pertinent for today. When we're looking at who should pay, without anybody being responsible, you'll get no action. As part of my work in Defra, we're trying to sort of nail down, who's going to be responsible for picking up this tab. Roadrunner. Well, this is a picture of the Don in Sheffield, which is like most urban water bodies, quite polluted and needs quite a bit of work. So, should it be the Environment Agency who have responsibility for the rivers? Well, or should it be, say, the water companies who own the outfalls, sometimes the local authorities that own the outfalls that go into the rivers? That seems like a place we could intervene, but it's not necessarily fair, because the local authorities, the water companies, don't put this polluting matter down the drain. Is it the highways authorities or the highways agency who own the road infrastructure and the drainage? Well, they they own the pathway, but again, they don't really, they didn't cause the pollution in the first place. Here we have the road user, the car user, which you saw from Robert's slide earlier, that lovely one with the car and the doggy do. And on that, it picked out the points of high polyaromatic hydrocarbons, metals, etc., coming from the car. So you get for everything from grinding down of brake pads to emissions from exhaust, polyaromatics from tyres, and all points on the car. So you could approach them, but you're not going to be able to persuade car owners to drive less miles because they might have an impact on water quality. That doesn't seem like a sensible point of intervention. Or do you attack the automotive industry? These are the people who make the car, so do you get them to make it from more environmentally beneficial sources? And we've done this to a certain extent where we can. You've got changes in the components of tyres now to reduce the polyaromatics that come from tyres. In the Los Angeles area, they use porcelain brake pads to remove the copper from the brake pads. So it can be done. If you can imagine, we're not going to legislate to try and get every single one of those parts that's to improve their sort of environmental performance. So it's very difficult to try and sort of pin the tail on the donkey here. And it's a challenge. It's a complex nature. The urban environment, you work in it, you know. The drains, we don't know where they go. We don't know where one drain leads and where it comes out. We've got a chap here. It's a bit disingenuous, this, because it's a picture of Sheffield, but this chap's dye testing a misconnection in Bristol. So I apologise for that. But you can see how ridiculously time-consuming sort of trying to bring sort of improvements here. We've got a washing machine here, and then that little powder goes into the drain, he flushes it through, and it comes out in the river in a tributary of the Avon. But he has to go and drive down there and find it. So you imagine the time and the effort and the expense of tracing one misconnection. I think estimates are in the region of £1,000 to £1,500 per misconnection. Well, if you think that there's, whatever there might be, 300,000 misconnections in the country, well, you just can't afford to just do it this sort of like track and trace method. I mean, there must be alternatives that we've got to look for. And what value do we put on this? Well, clearly, that's not very valuable. But as time goes by, people are turning more to their urban rivers as a sort of source of a quality of life. Housing developments are starting to focus on them again. So it's like, what is the value of our urban rivers? They are increasing. So we need to be able to reflect what the public wish for and see what their willingness to pay is as far as the money that we can spend on this. Because there's other competing demands, floods or water resources, and it's just part of the water environment. Then you've got, a huge array of, public spend. So it's what is the appropriate amount of money we spend on tackling this problem. This indicates where we are with our knowledge. There's serious gaps in our understanding of this area. We're pretty well on top of point source pollution. I meant to put in a slide there about where we are with point source. So we understand what comes out of a wastewater treatment works. We understand to a certain extent how it gets in there and how to treat this. We've got a pretty good understanding now of agriculture and the sources of nitrate and phosphate and stuff and other nutrients, etc. But when it comes to the non-ag side, we are woefully unprepared, I suppose, to face the challenges. We don't know the scale, the size, how to intervene. We don't know the best places, which sources. And so we're busily collecting our evidence on this, but we can't necessarily do this in a sort of a linear form. If we wanted to get every bit of evidence, then we're never going to be able to, we're not going to start for the next 5 years. And that's, as you saw on Damien's slide, about where we need to be for the Water Framework Directive. But I shall come to a bit more in that in a minute. So we're looking at, and these are the strategy is going to be produced later, the consultation for the strategy, which I all hope you engage in, will be produced later in the year. So these are sort of like our draft principles. They're not nailed or set in stone at the minute, but this is what along the lines that we're thinking. We think we need to set out some principles so people can understand how this all fits together. So we're going to tackle the sources that present greatest risk. I mean, a lot of this you're going to think, yeah, that's pretty motherhood and apple pie. It might be, but we don't think it needs to be restated, just so everyone has a clear understanding of where we are. And this one is a sort of fairly contentious issue. Most of us would agree with the polluter pays principle. It's a tenet of environment agencies thinking since it's been established. It makes perfectly good sense. If you pollute, you pay, that's it. But then there comes a point when it's not always easy to establish who the polluter is. I've just showed you the example of the road runoff, where you can't necessarily establish who is the polluter. So who should pay for this? And the argument is coming forward that the beneficiary should contribute because they're the ones getting benefit out of the ecosystem. But where does that interface lie? Well, that's a debate that we'll be having over the next few months because obviously there is an interface between those two and that we just need to iron out. Okay, intervention should be based on best available evidence. As I said, the evidence gaps are there, so it's the best available evidence that we have. And where possible, no regret solutions, and I shall give you a few examples in a moment, and represent value for money. Money's scarce at the moment. We need to be able to make sure that it's spent in the right way. Preventing pollutants from entering the environment as a province to mitigating their impact. Adopting a catchment-based approach where appropriate. Obviously, things like intervention at source is not going to be catchment-based. We need national or maybe EU-wide solutions for that. And then it's a stated government preference to use advice and incentives and voluntary measures in preference to regulation. So what are our urban priorities? Well, these four represent the four major ones that we are trying to tackle at the moment. In that top corner there is in situ contaminated sediment. So this is can be historic or can be recent. Pete Rudd, who runs the Lower League catchment. This is a serious source of water body failure down there. Huge tons of contaminated sediment that become reanimated in flood events, things like that, that can cause water body failures. Then in the corner up here, you've got an example of road runoff. From, it can be from highways or highways agency or highways authorities, but also it's from the wider, like verges, car parks, etc., etc., etc. Here in the bottom corner, we have a lovely example of misconnections. This is from the Birmingham Sparkbrook area, where it can have a sort of a devastating effect on small water bodies, and can, not just the water quality, but the aesthetics there impacted too. And then finally, trading estates. So the wash-off from trading estates can be chronic, it can be acute, but it is significant. Where people move vehicles, store chemicals, store oil inappropriately, waste stored inappropriately, all lead to polluting runoff, which can impact our water bodies. That's not it. This is an example of a combined sewer overflow. So I'm not sure if this comes into your world much, but this is when the normal foul system can't cope with the demand. Rather than it backing up, they go out these sort of outfalls just there. This is a chicken tikka masala crash of a tanker up near Newcastle. No, I didn't think I'd get on past you. This is Saltburn Mine up in the northeast. This is an example of mine waters. Mine waters, small but significant. There's not that many mines, but they can. I think they cause about 7% of all water body failures, something like that, and they can be quite devastating. There's a pollution from a mine in Anglesey where the river that runs from it, the pH is 4. So it can have real serious impact. This is an example of septic tanks. I can't imagine there's that many in the London area, but in the rural setting, these can affect the headwaters of a river quite significantly if they're not maintained properly, putting phosphate into the watercourse and causing eutrophication. And here we have an example. We shouldn't sort of like look at, when people, you'll hear suds today, but it's not just the urban environment where suds are appropriate. This sediment trap is used in an agricultural setting too. Okay, so this is the draft slide to try and point out where we're at. This is our thinking at the moment. So we can't do everything. We can't do all the things that we want to do. It's too expensive. It's too much. It's too much for sort of like compared to the money that we have. So in this slide, we said, so how are we going to prioritise what we're going to do? So this is a sort of a cost-benefit graph, saying we're going to approach things from the top right corner. And the dark colours are ones we have a lot of information, a lot of evidence about. The lighter ones we have not so much evidence about. And then the size of the shape indicates what we think the problem is. So where we are here, one of the reasons why we wanted to run days like today is because you will see that urban runoff is we consider a significant reason for failure. And then behind that is in situ riverbed sediment, which again is another significant reason for failure, and the two are intrinsically linked in as much as the urban runoff becomes the in situ riverbed sediment problem. So you can see, it is massively significant. And then the other one that's sort of blocked off of it there is abuse of the drainage network. This is like wet trades and DIY car maintenance, things like that. People chipping inappropriate material down the drain. So a lot of it comes into your sphere of influence. And tackling the symptoms is not the problem. So again, here we have a picture of weed clearing on the lower Lee to try and get rid of some of the weed that clogs it all up. And here we've got a sodium hydroxide dosing boat to try and up the oxygen on Swansea in Swansea Bay. So we can't look to try and solve the symptoms. That's never going to work. It might be cost effective now. We might not have anything else to do anything else, but in the future we've got to try and stop it at the source, intervene at the pathway, and then finally protect the receptor. So yeah. And as I was talking about no regrets, there are things that you guys can do that even though our evidence is not, it needs improving, there's things like permeable paving, we know that works. We know that removing curbs in sort of shared areas, that helps too. We've got an example of where someone's just changed the drain design to just tweak people's thinking about where what they put down the drain actually goes to, and permeable asphalt where appropriate. Okay, so we are moving forward on this, actually. And I've nicked this. Did I see Owen Davis was speaking today? Hello, well done. Yep, smashing. So you'll see, Owen, there's one of your slides I've stolen, just to link in for what you'll be talking about earlier. Plagiarism, I'm not ashamed. So we are moving forward. This is some really, really good examples. We've got treatment of mine runoff in Wales. This is a highways agency scheme in the top right. This is one of our officers drinking Volvic. No, it's not. Again, I'm not very good at this, am I? This is from Torbay. This is one of our offices in Torbay. We have a huge scheme down there which has improved the water quality of the Torbay from looking at misconnections and some road runoff and sort of various urban sources. And the water quality down there has shown significant improvement. It was looking to fail its bathing water standards and lose its blue flag status. And you can imagine, for a place like Torquay to lose its blue flag status, the impact on the economy is massive. So as the campaign here actually didn't cost that much money, I think in the region of £30,000-40,000. I might be making it up, but I know it wasn't very significant compared to the return on investment. And here we have one that sort of like inspired me last week at the CIRIA conference to say, yeah, any small opportunities for road improvement you can put in, sort of opportunities for, attenuating flow and cleaning up sort of the road sediment. So yeah, brilliant stuff. I think, and now I might be able to, yeah, that's me. So.